Ocean City Merlin Clown. So, here is another one of my stories I wanted to share, and who knows, here on Reddit, someone may very well know of the guy I'm speaking of. I bet just don't send him in my direction. Excuse format, no matter what I do, my phone still squishes it all together. So, for those of you not familiar, Ocean City, Maryland is on the eastern coast and is a large connection of streets running along a lengthy boardwalk, oceanside with attractions and food and stores all the way along. I have been spending summers there my whole life up to present date. I cannot give you an exact year except to say that I was a very young child, and between the ages of 5 to 9, so between the years 1985 to 1989 is as close as accurate as I can narrow this down to. Along the boardwalk at the time, they had an old school dunking booth, unporned, but Ocean City and its boardwalk has changed attractions and stores and restaurants throughout the years, so this booth is no longer there. But it functioned through mid to late 80s and ceased, I believed, around the 90s, but I digress. They had this guy dressed as a clown that sat within the booth. Half-ass white makeup sometimes with a red nose, sometimes just paint if I recall correctly. Sometimes the guy was smoking a cigar, his paint and cigar wet from previous dunks in the water. And if business was slow, or even if it wasn't, he'd yell insults at folks walking by, trying to get them mad enough to toss the balls and try to hit the bullseye to dunk him. He'd say some mean shit, like to a middle-aged man and woman walking through, "Hey fatty, you feeling lucky tonight, tough guy? And that beluga with ya?" And things of this nature, worse or vulgar. In fact, some years later, my mom said that he had to get security to escort him to his car for his safety. Anyways, on summer evening, we're strolling through the beach and he's calling out his insults, trying to get someone to pay him to dunk. I kinda made eye contact with him as I was eating an ice cream cone. I noticed he was not wearing his nose. In fact, it was floating near him in the dunk tank. He looked straight at me, and then he started licking the transparent dunk tank wall, and he shouts to my mom and stepdad, "Hey mom and dad, she looks like a tasty little snack," and licks the glass again. My stepdad, without even thinking, flicks him off, and we scooted on by. He still made eye contact with me as mom dragged me along, and I literally lost the top of my ice cream on the boardwalk, with him still licking the glass. Then the crowd filled in, and I never saw him there again. Thank goodness, creepy, insulting Ocean City clown. Let's not meet. Ever. Ever. The closest call I had with a psycho. This is another story that happened in college. During my final year in college, I was living in a 2-bedroom on-campus apartment with 4 other girls. My actual roommate, Christine, is a sweetheart, and we're still like sisters even now, after over 10 years of friendship. That was our 3rd year rooming together, and we even signed up for the same summer abroad programs. We like to joke, we'd used up all our roommate luck by finding each other, because our suite and apartment mates were interesting. The rest don't warrant individual stories on their own, but I'll just type it up in the comments, if you guys want to. The 2 other girls sharing our apartment was Chelsea and Brittany. Chelsea was normal, but Brittany was problematic. She would always bring different guys home every night, which was fine, except for the fact that she was in a relationship with a cop who carried a gun everywhere with him, and had serious anger and jealousy issues. Oh, and she'd have sex all over every surface of the apartment. The night this incident happened, there was a St. Patrick's Day party with 3 concerts happening in the school, so there were loads of people on campus. Brittany and Chelsea have gone off to party, but Christine and I decided to stay at home to binge on Friends reruns because we're so cool, or lame anyways. In the middle of our Friends binge session, we heard someone hammering at our door. "Hey, can you let me in? I need to borrow your phone." It was a male voice. We immediately assumed it was one of Brittany's guys. Sometimes they would just make up stories just to get into our apartment, then refuse to leave until she comes back so they can hook up and get into shouting matches. "What should we do?" Christine whispered to me. I knew what she wanted, but she was too nice to say it, so I said it for her. Let's pretend we're not here and not answer. We were in no mood to entertain a guy for a few hours while he waited for Brittany to get back. The guy banged on our door and asked to borrow our phone several times, but eventually gave up and left. We had fun watching the rest of the episode when our phones buzzed. We both checked our phones and it was an automatically generated campus-wide alert text. There was a stabbing on campus. It was in our very apartment and happened in the unit above ours. The stabber was an unidentified male, and he was still on the loose. I looked at Christy and asked her, could it be? She looked unsure but went, nah, it couldn't. Yeah, it couldn't. We made sure we barricaded the door to our room before we slept, though, in case Brittany brought Mr. Stabby home. I mean, she doesn't have the best taste in men. The next day, we read the school paper to find out more about the incident. Apparently, the guy knocked on the victim's door, asking to borrow her phone. She let her in, and as soon as he was inside her apartment, he grabbed a knife from the kitchen countertop and stabbed her multiple times in the stomach. He was a complete stranger, and it seems that his only motivation was to stab someone. Since the campus was filled with thousands of people during the party, the guy easily slipped into the crowd and disappeared. Our apartment was on the ground floor and right next to the stairs. If someone was going knocking on every apartment, our apartment was most definitely right before the victim's apartment. Christine and I definitely spent a few minutes shouting, holy shit, oh my god, holy shit. Turned out, having a shitty apartment mate may have saved us. There was even an article about it on the news. The apartment was Levy 6. If you're a fellow lying during that time, you remember that it was a month after there was a shooting over a high school basketball game hosted on campus. Fortunately for me, though, I was graduating in 2 months, so my mom couldn't pull me out of LA and make me move back to Indonesia ASAP. Yes, my mom received the alert too, knew our apartment's layout, and so she placed everything together and realized it could have been me or Christine. Trapped in a house with psychos. This happened when I was about 7 years old and in the 90s. I'm a guy, to clarify. I made a new friend who was a bit odd, like he would eat a live worm and then chew on it, then open his mouth to show it wriggling about in pieces and then eat it, or remove a snail shell without killing it, or eating a dehydrated flavoring from ramen noodle packet and say it's spaceman food. I invited him over to my house to see my room and what stuff I had. But then he wanted to take me to his place, so I said I would get changed because it's really hot. Back when, I had a weird habit of wearing swimming trunks when it was hot. I guess it felt cooler than wearing shorts to me, although I didn't wear underwear because I figured you don't wear underwear when you go swimming, so you don't wear them any other time you wore swimming trunks either. My friend noticed I was wearing swimming trunks and asked why, and I explained. I also said I wasn't wearing underwear because I thought it was funny. He looked shocked and wanted to know why. I explained, and he looked like I told him my dad was Hulk Hogan or something, and he wouldn't drop it the whole time we walked to his place. When we arrived, the house looked normal enough until we went inside. The smell hit me immediately. That stale, damp smell, combined with dog piss and shit. I also noticed there were no carpets and the floorboards were rotten. We headed into the living room and it's full of people. 5 or so teenagers much older than us. I'm guessing his siblings, and I'm guessing their mother who sat in the corner knitting. She was probably in her 50s. My friend introduced me, and everyone kind of nodded in my direction. I noticed a girl trying to stuff a handful of cigarettes into her mouth, and one of the boys lit them for her, and everyone was laughing when she choked after one puff. I was in shock because I was raised knowing kids are not allowed to smoke, so I immediately looked at the mother to see her reaction. But she didn't even react, just kept knitting while looking down. Next, my friend announces that I'm not wearing underwear, and the eldest boy, I'm guessing between age 13 to 16, explodes with shock and excitement and says, "What? Show me!" I got scared and said I was wearing underwear, hoping they'd drop it, but they all got interested and cornered me and kept telling me to just pull them down so we can see. And I said I want to go home, but they said no, I can't go until I show them, and he pulled out his Swiss Army knife and had this grin on his face. I looked at their mother thinking, isn't she going to tell him to stop? But she just kept knitting. My friend was supporting them, so I realized I had to rely on myself to get out of the situation. I looked around for a way to escape. One of them was blocking the door we came in, but I saw there was another door leading further into the house, so I darted for it before anyone could get in front of it, hoping I'd find a back door. Thankfully I did, and it was unlocked and I exploded out of it, and they had a dog there that started barking at me, so I ran to the short chain link fence and pretty much leapt over it with all my adrenaline going through me, and looked back, but none of them were chasing me. I got home and was still hyped up, but thought I best not let my mom know what went on. I never spoke to my friend, or saw him after that. Manically laughing hyena clowns, what the actual fuck? Hey there, guys. Never posted here before, but here goes. I'm a female. And when I was 16 years old, I hung out mostly with a small group of friends. Toby was gay, John was a small guy who posed as being macho, and a foreign exchange student from Spain named Maria. At the time, both John and I had a bit of a crush on Maria, since she was bisexual, so we both attempted to impress her anytime an opportunity arose. So on to the story. One night in October, we were all hanging out at Toby's smoking weed like the fly little shits we were, and Maria said that she wished she could do something scary, since Halloween was close, and it was her first in the States. Me, being the absolute pussy that I am, loved the idea of doing scary things like ghost hunts and shit, but actually doing them freaked me out. But wanting to impress her with my bravery or stupidity, however you look at it, I suggested we go to this place called Spider's Gate. It's an old cemetery, but there was a bit of a hike into the woods and super old. But it was supposed to be super haunted, so we drove the half hour in my dad's beat-up Pathfinder to the middle of nowhere until we came to the path that led deep into the woods where the cemetery was. I parked across the street. The car didn't really lock because it was so old and beat up, so we just left it there and took the keys. We smoked a bowl or two on our way to the cemetery, and once we got there, we were stoned out of our minds. So we walked around the cemetery for a little while, and nothing significantly really happens. We hear some rustling and shit, which is probably just animals and the wind blowing through the trees, making eerie howling sounds, but it was nothing out of the ordinary. We go to a part of the cemetery where the ground is a bit raised, like you're standing on a stage, and there are trees surrounding it basically in a circle, and we smoke another bowl. We were there for it must have been like 20 minutes of just talking and smoking and laughing about stupid shit when we heard loud, heavy crunches through leaves and twigs, coming from deeper into the woods from the opposite direction we had come. It didn't sound like an animal. We all quieted down and looked, but it had stopped. We shrugged it off and went back to smoking. John and I flirted particularly with Maria, while Toby flirted with John, and it was a pretty good night. Then Maria stopped and told us to look into the woods. Right where she was pointing, probably about like 50 to 100 yards away, there was a light. Now, it basically looked like somebody was just holding a flashlight pointed towards us, but they were so far away that the beam didn't really reach us. A few seconds later, it went out, and we could hear this really weird, high-pitched hyena-like laughing. I'm talking like crazy, mechanical, clown-like shit. What the fuck was that? We're miles away from houses before anybody really said anything. Another light flashed on, but this time a bit closer and probably 50 or so yards to the left of the first one. We could hear running through the woods from the direction of the first light when the second went out with the same creepy-ass laughter. We communally decided to nope the fuck out of there and started pretty hastily back down the trail. It was a really dark night. I think the clouds are really heavy in front of the moon, so seeing anything besides what our cell phones illuminated in the night was pretty impossible. A couple minutes down the path, we started to calm down a bit and talk about what the fuck had just happened, but after only a few seconds of calm, the heavy footsteps started up behind us in the leaves. We stopped and turned. About 50 feet behind us, only barely visible, was the outline of something in the middle of the path. I probably would have shit myself if I wasn't so goddamn high. Now, John, being the brave macho guy, stepped out and yelled at whatever it was to leave us the fuck alone. A light switched on, I'm assuming that in the person's hand, and they didn't move. They just stood there holding the light. This time they were close enough for the beam to fall onto us, though. John yelled at the person for probably another 30 seconds or so before they turned off the light and we could see him walking away. Oh wow, we heard the same crazy laughing from far in the woods. We quickly made our way the fuck out of there and went back to the car. We got him ready to drive as fast away as we could, but when I turned the key, nothing, not even the slow turning over, nothing. Sean liked to think he knew about cars, so we all got out and he looked under the hood. The two cables that connected the battery were hanging free. The screws that attached them under the posts or terminals or whatever you call them were missing. He didn't know if we could reconnect them without the screws, and honestly, I still don't. So we decided to call for help. No cell service. So what the fuck do we do now? We're in the middle of the woods with a dead car and no way to contact anybody, and we were sure those creeps weren't far behind us because we could hear them like fucking hyenas playing manhunt in the forest. Luckily, a minute or so after, a car came down the road and, seeing our hood up, pulled to the side of the road to see if we needed help. I was really happy to see that it was two older women and not some manically laughing freak. We gladly accepted a ride from them to the nearest place with cell service and called my parents to pick us up. Needless to say, they were sort of upset with us for going to a cemetery in the first place, since it's technically trespassing, and for leaving the car there. But overall, they were just glad we were fine after getting in the car with strangers, however nice and innocent they were. The next day, my dad, Toby, and I went back to get the car. Weirdly, we both had cell service. Not sure what the fuck was going on there. I'm glad that those two old women came by and offered a ride when they did. I'm not exactly sure if they were just having some twisted version of fun, or if they were out to do actual harm, but I'm glad we didn't have a chance to find out that night. So, manically laughing hyena clowns in the woods. Let's not ever fucking meet again. Psycho relatives. When I was 16 years old, almost 3 years ago, I found it very hard to go on with my life. I was depressed and I knew, but I couldn't confide in anyone. I have a great relationship with my parents. I can talk about anything with them except what I'm actually feeling about. I don't blame them, it's just that they have this image in their head about who I am, but it's not true and I don't want to shatter it. Anyways, on to the story now. My grades plummeted when I went from grade 10 CGPA to barely making an 8. I couldn't talk about it to my friends. For them, I was still the funniest person in the group. So you get the picture, I'm in a very bad place. The only option that came to my mind was my cousin, who is about 7 months younger than myself. Let's call her Rachel. She is my maternal uncle's daughter, although my mother and my uncle are very close. His daughter, son, and wife are a different story. My aunt is absolutely fucking crazy. She threw a tantrum at my mom's wedding because my dad had a better paying job than my uncle. Then she got pregnant as soon as my parents announced they were pregnant with me. She has made her daughter the same way. She copies every single thing I do. She even took up the same subjects at me at school. Cuts her hair the same way, got the same highlights when I did, and wants to get in the same profession as me. So I knew it wasn't a great idea, but she was visiting us and I just blurted out. Now, this girl convinced me that I was right, that I'd never be a good person, and I'd stay emotionally alone forever, and it was better that I ended my life. Then she got me drunk. At this point, I locked myself in the bathroom and tried to commit suicide, but in my drunken state, I couldn't cut deep, so I woke up a few hours later sprawled on the cold bathroom floor, in a puddle of my own blood, to my phone ringing. It was Mom. They wouldn't be back for a few days. The loss of blood made me dizzy, but I managed to get out of my clothes and stand beneath the shower for a few seconds. Then I threw myself on my bed and passed out. When I woke up at 2 p.m., I managed to sleep through the afternoon and the night and into the next day. I found Rach, her mom, and her brother having pizza in the living room. They had this weird expression when they saw me. Disappointment, maybe. I don't remember much. All I remember is getting a bar and water and passing out again in my bedroom. I was woken up next day by my friends who had come over. They were concerned because Rach had told them that I was pregnant, which wasn't true. That combined with me not answering my phone for 3 days made them worried. I made some lame excuse about my cell going bust to get them out of there. The truth is that I still haven't told anyone about the incident, but I told my parents to cut ties with them because they were weird and jealous people, to which my family agreed. So now we aren't in touch, but I still see them at family gatherings and such. So, psycho relatives. Let's not meet. Creep at the drive-thru. So my story is pretty tame compared to some of the ones that I've been reading, but it freaked me the hell out when it happened. My husband and I were hungry and didn't feel like cooking, so we drove to White Castle. I should add that this White Castle is probably not in the best neighborhood in the world, but it's not like going out after dusk is going to get you mugged or something like that. We were the only car in the drive-thru. It is taking forever for someone to take our order for some goddamn reason. We're sitting there bullshitting when this guy starts to wander up to our car. He's a dirty, stringy-haired skin mess and he looks like he's high on something. For a few minutes, the guy just stands there, swaying back and forth awkwardly. I don't feel like being asked for money or a ride or whatever, so I roll my window up. There's something off about this dude, other than he seems high. At about this point, a feeling tells me to lock the doors now. I lock the doors about 2 seconds before he grabs the back door handle and starts pulling on it. I freak out and hit the gas. We circle the building and park on the far end of the parking lot, because I want to tell management that there was a creep in their parking lot, and damn it, we are determined to get our food. After we park, we can see the drive-thru from where we are, and we watch this guy walk back to a car, no longer swaying or looking strung out. He said something to the driver. The driver gets into the passenger seat and lets the dude drive, and away they go. My husband theorizes that they wanted to steal my car to sell it for money, or to pay for their much nicer car or drugs. So, creepy guy that tried to get into my car, let's not meet again. Crazy escaped criminal. I'm really shaken up by what I'm about to speak of, as I've literally just found out the full truth to the story. So bear with me. This took place yesterday on 24th February, around 3:55 for reference. Anyways, on with it. Yesterday, I, male 17, had set off walking to pick up my little brother, 11 years old, from his primary school, and it was pretty much the same mundane mile-long walk I do every weekday to pick him up. I made it around the hallway point when I saw two young adults across the road from me, probably 10 meters further along than I was, who were taking a photo of a woman who was walking in their direction. I had my earphones in with the Nirvana blasting my eardrums, so I couldn't hear what they were yelling excitedly about, so I walked on. When the woman had become parallel with me from the other side of the road, her head snapped to the right. I was on the left side of the road, and she was on the opposite, like something from The Exorcist, and stared right at me. She then stumbled her way across the road, completely ignoring a car which really nearly ran her over, causing it to brake sharply. She walked like somebody who had been taking drugs for a long period of time, or somebody who was extremely drunk. She then reached me. I stood still, terrified, and then less than a foot from my face, as if personal space is an alien concept to her. She has the mannerisms of a lunatic, unpredictably thrashing her hands by her side, and her eyes were wild, like someone consumed by anger. Her hair was slightly past her shoulder blades, a greasy faded brown color, which was almost slightly curled. She also wore an olive gray bomber jacket, which had not been washed in weeks by the look of it. This will all become relevant when you read on. She angrily mumbled to me in gibberish, swaying on the spot, slightly advancing towards my face with hers. At this point, she was probably 20 centimeters from my face, and her eyes were wide, staring at me as she mumbled. I quickly made a break from it, and sidestepped her and jogged away from her, probably for 100 meters. When I looked back, she had vanished, so I carried on to collect my brother, really creeped out by her. I also like to mention that this was a straight road with no side streets for hundreds of meters, so unless she had Superman speed, she could not have possibly walked down them. I wasn't too surprised that this had happened, as I live in a part of South Yorkshire, which is famous for its drug users, and I was walking through a rough and dodgy neighborhood as it was. You know, the types with trainers dangling from the phone lines above the roads. I collect my little brother as usual, and we had to walk back the way I came, straight past the spot where I'd encountered her. I told him to be on high alert just in case she returned with her threatening behavior and had a knife or something like that, and gave him instructions on how he was going to run away if I told him to, and find the next shop along, as the staff have known us for years, and to stay there until I came for him. Anyways, we reached the shops near my house, and I see a police car and an ambulance approaching it. So I joked to my brother that it was the woman who I encountered 15 minutes ago. We reached the part of the footpath that the police car was parked next to. And who was being arrested and led into the police car? You guessed it. The woman who had approached me. There were local shop owners stood in a group near the car talking amongst each other, looking shaken, but I assumed they were just being nosy as usual. I forgot all about this until now. About 20 minutes ago, I was eating with my family in our living room, where my younger sister, 14, innocently mentioned to my mom that there had been a post she had seen on Snapchats about somebody in our local area who was dangerous and should not be approached. Normally, I just ignore this, as my sister is a typical 14-year-old girl who believes anything her friends say, but what she said afterwards made my heart stop, and I was almost sick in my mouth. My sister was at a friend's sleepover yesterday and didn't see me again until today, so I hadn't mentioned this to her. She told us how a woman in the local area had been arrested for vandalizing property in the area, robbing homes and mugging people on the street. She'd also been in the local shops, threatening the staff and acting like a lunatic, shouting things at them. My sister then gave a description of what she looked like, and that's when I was nearly sick in my mouth. She had the exact same description as the woman I had met earlier. She then showed me a photo of the woman, and as you guessed it, it was her. You know what makes this even more creepy? Those guys I mentioned earlier who I saw taking the photos were taking this photo that had been circulating on social media, and I was just out of shot on it. Those shopkeepers I saw stood outside were those who had been threatened by her, who called the police. It turns out that this woman had escaped from a psychiatric ward and had been terrorizing the neighborhood and should not be approached under any circumstances, as she's very unpredictable and dangerous. Though luckily she's arrested, I believe. I suppose it simply goes to show how lucky some people can be to not be attacked in these circumstances. So, crazy escaped criminal from the psych ward. Let's not meet. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but that restraining order hasn't expired yet, so fuck off crazy. This was nearly 3 years ago. I am currently 21 years old. However, this incident happened around the time I had just turned 19. I met my neighbor when I began attending my first fall semester at community college. It was around week 3 of the fall semester, and I just finished up with my History 112 class, and decided to stay on campus for this magic show. I arrived and watched the show when I saw this guy wearing a "Do you bite your thumb at me, sir?" shirt. I'm a huge English lit nut, so I complimented him on his taste. We struck a conversation, and at the time, he seemed like a decent person, and soon asked for my number, which I gave him. Big mistake. After we parted ways, he asked me if I would like to go on a date with him. I didn't consider this a red flag because people are just straight to the point. However, I just ended a 4-year long-distance relationship, and was still attempting to get over it. And I also didn't find him the least bit attractive. I politely told him no, and that if he wanted to meet for coffee on campus sometime, I would be up for that. He took me up on my coffee offer, and we agreed on a date to meet and continued to meet every day for about a week. I suddenly got a text from him asking me to be his girlfriend, to which I responded with, "I'm flattered, however, I still hardly know anything about you. You're also not my type, but I'd like to continue being friends." While I did enjoy his company, I wasn't going to lie to the poor guy and act like he had a romantic chance. However, this set off a whole bunch of crazies. He proceeded to text me things like, "But you do know me, we've met before." I want to clarify, I had never met this man before, that considering our first meeting was the magic event on campus. He proceeded to use the time I mentioned my father being in the military, hoping to falsely convince me that we had met in the past. I have a very good memory and decided to test him. "Oh wait, are you from when I lived in Wisconsin?" The bait worked and he replied, "Yes, thank God you remember me. One thing I hate more than anything is a liar," and it looked like I caught one in the act. I proceeded to tell him that I never lived in Wisconsin, and that lying wasn't going to make me want to date him. This angered him, and after a few rude and desperate messages, I turned off my phone and went to my next class. Once class finished, I turned my phone back on, and I saw 58 missed calls, 31 voice messages, and around 217 text messages. I was officially freaked out by voice message number 5 because of the things he said that I don't feel comfortable typing out. I immediately blocked his number after telling him to leave me alone and assumed that would be the end of it. I was stupid to think he would just walk away. Every class I took, he could be seen staring at me from the hallway eerily. I didn't want to get campus police involved because the paperwork is excessive, and I thought that sooner or later he would give up, but things only escalated. It got so bad that he found out where I worked and proceeded to follow me into the bathroom during my break. I was so scared I rushed into the nearest stall and locked the door, trying my best to keep it together. Enraged by me running away, he attempted to break the stall I was in, and I was sure he would get to me. Thankfully, a group of guys heard me crying and is banging against the stall door and rushed into the ladies' room to help me. The group of guys scared him away after threatening to call the police, and I was sent home by my manager and forced to take a week off because she feared for my safety. I finally broke my silence the moment he put me in the hospital. Not even 2 days after the bathroom incident, I had been reading at the local library, where I received peer tutoring for my math course. It was around 7 p.m., and I realized everyone had already left. I closed the door and checked to make sure it locked properly before walking to my car. I realized too late that the psycho had followed me and was now crouched next to my passenger side door. I was about 3 feet away from my car when I saw him, and I immediately knew it was fight or flight, and fight wasn't going to be an option for me. I attempted to make a run for it, but was just thrown to the ground where he beat me within an inch of my life. I was saved from the driver of a farm fresh delivery truck. The driver noticed my attacker crouched down in front of something and soon realized that he wasn't crouched down in front of something, he was crouched down in front of someone. My attacker was removing his pants while towering over my beaten and unconscious body when this brave man tackled him. If it wasn't for him calling 911 and pummeling that asshole to the ground, I would have ended up a victim of not only a brutal beating, but also ended up a victim of rape. I woke up in the hospital and was told I had a concussion, fractured collarbone, broken arm, dislocated shoulder, sprained ankle, busted upper lip, and sustained severe damage to my right eye. I spent 5.5 months in that hospital and immediately got school authorities and local authorities involved with the hopes of putting his ass in jail. He was released from prison May of this year and was informed of my restraining order against him. Around June, the psycho attempted to add me on Facebook and has been hounding my friends for information since then. I'm starting to think that contacting his parole officer and putting his ass back in jail might be the best option. I'll be sending a link to this to my friends and will be instructing them to send it to him if he contacts them. So asshole, if you're reading this, I just wanted to say that I got a concealed carry license just for you. I don't plan on contacting your parole officer because if I even see you out of the corner of my eye, I'll put a bullet so far up your ass, doctors won't be able to remove it. I'll contact him after making sure you're able to sit comfortably for the rest of your life.